Okay, this is October the 27th, and this is Old Testament Survey, and we are in 1st and 2nd Kings, speaking and explaining the divided kingdom of Israel and Judah. Okay, so as we take a look at where we've come so far, coming through Genesis, we've come through the Pentateuch, we've come through the period of the Judges, and then of course we had the United Kingdom. Anybody know what books are covered in the United Kingdom? Oscar.
First and Second Samuel, and I think maybe the beginning parts of First Kings.
First 10 chapters of First Kings, yeah. Anyway, you have the United Kingdom. It's really good that you are able to put these sections of Israel's history into their proper, where you find it in the Bible. That's just good to know, because if you're witnessing to people, you're telling people stuff about the Bible, and if you can't find it in the Bible, a lot of people say that things are in the Bible, and then somebody says, oh yeah, where's that? And then if you can't find it, they think you're telling stories just like everybody else that they've heard. Like we heard or we saw, or I saw it one time. So you need to know where these things are in the scriptures. After the United Kingdom, can anybody tell me how long the United Kingdom was? How long did it last?
120 years.
Okay, raise your hand though, so yes.
120 years.
120 years. Does anybody disagree with that? Is there an alternate number you could put there?
Well, I don't know the number exactly, but there's some people who think that Saul's reign lasted only 32 years.
That is correct. So 40 plus 40 plus 32 is
112.
112, yeah. So 112, I mean, depending upon which commentaries you read, it just depends upon how they put the passages together and the numbers. Like say since it doesn't outright say that Saul reigned for 40 years, of course that opens it up for people to come up with putting various scriptures together, coming up with various dates, and so you end up with either 32 years or 40 years. Okay, so we have the United Kingdom. What was the Northern Kingdom? Israel, that's right. Consisting of how many tribes? How many tribes? Kenan?
10.
10 tribes. When did the United Kingdom start? Oscar. Important date.
Like the actual date.
Yeah.
No, I don't remember.
Anybody? What was the actual date? Anybody remember?
931 maybe?
931. This is on your thing there. Good. Some things, like keep in mind that you don't want to just be able to look everything up. I mean, that's a good thing, but some things you want memorized too. You just want to have it in your head, because if you're in a discussion or something like that, although I realize all you guys have your iPods and all that stuff with you, you can just come up with anything you want. Yeah.
931 BC is the split of the kingdom or the end of the United? What did you say?
It is the end of the United Kingdom, and also happens to be the start of the divided kingdom. Okay. That's when the split occurred. Who was the last king? Who was the last king of the United Kingdom? Solomon. Who were the first two kings in the divided kingdom? Oscar.
Saul and David.
I'm sorry, I meant in the divided kingdom.
Jeroboam and Rehoboam.
Who's who?
Jeroboam was the northern kingdom, and Rehoboam was the southern kingdom.
Yeah. Okay. So Austin, who was the king of the southern kingdom?
I don't know.
Okay, somebody?
Wait, what?
Yes,
Is Rehoboam?
Rehoboam. Okay. Okay. I'll be calling on you guys today just to make sure you guys are staying sharp. Hey, I think this is the first all-male class I've had since I've been teaching here at the school. It's like being in the Navy again. Okay. Does anybody know when the Northern Kingdom ended? Yes.
Let's say 722.
Yeah, 721, 722 BC. Okay. This is like, start off without your notes. Like, so just see what you know, okay? So, Keenan, just look straight ahead. Forget your notes first. This is just checking your memory right now. 721 or 722 BC. So when it ended. Who carried away, what happened to him? Keenan.
The Assyrians captured them,
And did what?
tortured them.
What did they do with them?
They used them as slaves.
You're missing the point.
Exile them.
Exile's not the right word. Exile them from what?
The land? Probably.
They took them captivity, they removed them out of the land. In other words, they basically went in and they removed a good portion of the people and resettled them hundreds of miles away in other places in the Assyrian kingdom. Does anybody know why you would do that? Why would you do that?
To take away, like, hope and ties to relatives, or I don't know.
Yes.
So they're like trying like to get rid of their nation basically.
Yeah. No, get rid of their national unity. I mean, if you're scattered, in other words, if they take you and they resettle you in several provinces, hundreds or even 1,000 miles away, say 500 to 1,000 miles away, and you're scattered in various portions of the Assyrian Empire, there's no more national unity. Okay, in other words, it destroys your national identity. Remember, it reverses the process of what God was doing in the beginning, which was to make them a united people. Okay, how about the Southern Kingdom? What happened there? First of all, when did it end? Isaac?
586 BC.
586 BC. Austin, who carried them away captivity?
Moses.
No, Moses is back here. We're like 1,000 years later.
Oh, I don't know.
Anybody? Somebody needs to do some Bible reading. Kenan,
The Babylonians,
Babylonians. Who is the king of Babylon?
Nebuchadnezzar.
Nebuchadnezzar. Okay. So Assyria, Babylon. Okay. We're going to look just a little bit ahead. I'm going to shrink this down.
I have a quick question, Jim.
Uh-huh.
When Ezra and Nehemiah rebuilt Israel and the wall around it,
Mm-hmm.
was it all one nation again, or was there still a division in the kingdom?
We'll kind of talk about when I started at the beginning of the divided kingdom. I'm going to answer that question at that point, okay? But just to give you a quick answer right now, the new nation, there is no Israel. The northern kingdom will no longer be there. All that they're going to have is basically what used to be Judah and Benjamin, basically, and it's essentially it's going to be called Judea, like it was in the days of Christ. It's going to be a different kingdom, but there's going to be representatives from all 12 tribes. Okay, but when I go back to the beginning right here, I'm going to describe that on how that happened. Okay, and I know it's review, but it's a good point to review. How long was they were taken away captive into Babylon? How long? How long were they in Babylon? Yes.
70 years.
70 years. Can anybody give a scripture for that? I mean, with just knowing. Well, go ahead and look it up. Anybody know? Okay, it's in Jeremiah. It's in Book of Daniel, and when they come back to the land, who's leading them back to the land? Well, what two books describe when they're back in the land? Kenan.
Ezra and Nehemiah.
Ezra and Nehemiah. Does anybody know where the book of Esther took place?
During that time.
Huh?
During that time.
When? Specifically. Where? Where would it be? On this line right here, where would it be? Say this is like 430 BC. And here's a 516 BC or 536 BC. Where would Ezra take place? Would you place, would you place Esther in Ezra or Nehemiah?
No.
What?
Between the two?
You mean on this line right there?
I think so.
It's a good guess, but it's not right. Yes.
I thought Esther was during the Babylonian exile.
No.
Okay. I would say in the beginning part of Ezra.
How about the end of Ezra?
Ezra end.
Yeah. And Austin, if I was to ask you, who's Esther, what would you say?
Forgot. I don't know right off the top of my head.
Anybody? Who's Esther?
She was a queen. Right?
Queen of what?
I don't know that one.
Yes.
Queen of Babylon.
No.
Persia.
Persia. What was her nationality?
She was Jewish.
Jewish. Okay. Okay. Just kind of like checking out where I got to go in this class today. We got to do some deep thinking here. Okay.
Quick question, Jim.
Yeah.
Is this history we're talking about,
Mhm.
is it accepted in secular history?
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, because I mean, there's lots of historical evidence for this.
Yes, absolutely. And matter of fact, when we talk about the kings today, we're going to notice that a lot of these kings that we see in Judah and Israel are in the Assyrian Chronicles and the Babylonian Chronicles and the Egyptian Chronicles, in other words, because they had dealings. If they had dealings with a particular king of Assyria or something like that, like say Esarhaddon or Tiglath-Pileser III or Sennacherib, there's records of this
Outside of the Bible.
outside of the Bible. Yeah. What would you think would be the greatest authority? What's most authoritative, what it says in the scripture or those secular sources? What would you find more authoritative? Like, for instance, if it's not in a secular source, does it mean you're not going to believe it?
No, not necessarily.
What would you say? What if one disagreed with the other? Which one would you say was truthful, and which one was probably wrong in its facts?
The Bible, because
The Bible, which
the word
would be
more authoritative.
more authoritative?
I know that there's some stuff that happens in the Bible where if you look like at secular records, like it's totally different because those cultures like wanted to make themselves look good.
Mhm.
So, like they made it look like they won the battle or like had a positive outcome, where the Bible would say something completely different.
Or they would lie about the battle, or they would just not mention. Ancient cultures were notorious for not mentioning defeats. Or, like, for instance, there's a case where in this period right here during King Hezekiah, Sennacherib, king of Assyria, comes in and nearly conquers all this. They conquered the Sennacherib and the Assyrian army, and he came in with an army of 185,000. And they conquered all of Judah except Jerusalem. But they surrounded Jerusalem. So he mentions how he conquers Jerusalem, how he conquered the land of Judah, and he had Hezekiah pinned up like a bird in a cage. That was a nice poetic way of saying that he didn't actually conquer Jerusalem, but he made it sound like he made himself good in his own right. Okay, and by the way, does anybody happen to know who the prophets would be during this era right here? During the
Whoa.
Austin? Keenan? Anybody?
Or Obadiah, one of them.
No.
Was Malachi?
It's a good guess, but it's wrong.
Was
What?
Malachi one of them?
Malachi, yeah. Malachi would be right here.
Zechariah.
Zechariah. One more.
Oh, wait.
Huh?
Daniel was during the Babylonian exile, right?
Yeah, Daniel is right here.
Is it Elijah?
No, Elijah is
Way back.
way back here. Okay. Haggai.
Oh.
Haggai. I know it was on the tip of your tongue. Okay. Okay. I just want to see where we are.
Wait, Jim, where's Ezra? Is Ezra the dot? Because it says Esther's right there.
Esther takes place right about there.
Oh.
Esther.
Okay, so
Ezra is this section right there. By the way, there's a big overlap in Ezra and Nehemiah as far as historically speaking. It's just I'm just putting the two books there. Okay, so we're going to go back to the beginning of the division of the kingdoms, okay? And I'm going to try to teach you how they tell time during the Kingdom Age when they it seems that they go from they go from Israel to Judah, and then it seems arbitrarily they go back to Israel for a while, then they go back to Judah, and they go they're going back and forth all the time. And so I'm going to basically show you what's happening there. Okay. So, Solomon dies. Does anybody know when Solomon died?
931.
What's that?
931.
It's a very good statement of fact. I'm not going to say I guess because you sounded pretty sure of yourself there. You're just saying it with confidence, right? But you're right. Why? I mean, he dies, and there's going to be a new king, and then the kingdom splits right after that. What's that?
Did he die at that time?
Yeah.
All happened
He didn't
within the same
retire.
year.
Huh?
Like, are you saying that like the whole conflict where Solomon dying, then his son taking the throne, then the whole thing about getting the counsel from the younger guys instead of the older guys, and then like the division of the kingdom, it all happened within the expanse of 1 year.
Yes.
All right.
I mean, Rehoboam was not a king of the United Kingdom. He never got the chance. God tore the kingdom away from him. The prophecy was that after Solomon was going to be the last king of the United Kingdom. And because of his sin, because remember he had 700 wives, 300 concubines, and he did of course lots of other things. He taxed the people heavily. It seems like the biggest reason that there was a division was Solomon so taxed. In other words, he imposed government taxes on the northern kingdom to fund building projects in the southern kingdom. In other words, the southern portion of the country. In other words, Solomon was of the tribe of Judah, like David, but he was taxing the 10 northern tribes for all the building projects. In other words, it's like living here in California, and we're being taxed heavily so they can build things in Texas.
Yeah.
And so people would get angry, says, hey, if we're going to tax us, let's keep the money here in our own state. So that was kind of like the argument. So he was taxing them, and then of course he had such a lavish court. I mean, when you're supporting 1,000, when you're either married to or have 300 concubines, 700 wives, and say so many of them have their own houses, and you're supporting that lavish court and this lavish lifestyle, it takes a lot of money. And so the taxes kept getting heavier and heavier and heavier, and the people were straining under the yoke of paying so, they go out and earn money, and over, say, 2/3 of it was going for taxes. That sound familiar to anybody? That's how it is in this country almost now. And so people were protesting, and so they said, if you lower the burden, lower the tax burden, Rehoboam, we will serve you. So Rehoboam, he says, well, let me go back to my counselors. I'll come back in 3 days, and I'll give you my answer. The older counselors say, ease the burden, and they will gladly serve you. The young men, and those that are the 40-year-olds, they're the young men, they say, you tell those wimps up north, you thought my daddy was tough. Wait till you see how tough I am. In other words, he said, my little finger is thicker than my father's loins or his waist. In other words, he whipped you with a whip. I'm going to whip you with a scourge. A cat of nine tails. In other words, a whip that had all the bits of metal and glass and all that stuff at the end. In other words, he said, I am really going to lay the burdens on you. And so the North said, basically, we have no inheritance in the son of David. So basically, the 10 northern tribes split off from the southern kingdom. Now, Rehoboam was ready to go to war. But then a prophet from God came in and said, don't go to war, this is from God. God said, this is from me, because it was judgment on Solomon. The only reason why the line of David got 2 tribes is because God made an unconditional promise that David would always have a man sitting on the throne. So he got 2 tribes, and of course Jeroboam gets 10 tribes in the north, and Rehoboam has 2 tribes in the south. Okay, then something happens. Okay, and this is like, for instance, in 1 Kings chapter 11 and 12, and around that area, when it's talking about how these kingdoms are getting established, Jeroboam is thinking in his mind, because God had told him that eventually the kingdoms would come together again. Of course, in the millennium, they come together again. There's just going to be, the 2 nations will be one. It'll no longer be a divided kingdom. Jeroboam is thinking that, wow, if they come back together, they're going to kill me. And so he's going to do something. Say, what would be tying Israel to the southern kingdom? Anybody got a guess? Austin. Anybody got a guess? Yes.
I think the temple in Jerusalem.
Yeah, why would that be a draw for the northern kingdom? Isaac.
That's the place they go to worship.
Yeah, so 3 times a year, all Israel, all 12 tribes are supposed to be in Jerusalem. Well, Jeroboam says, we can't have that, because that's going to keep these tribes close together. So what does Jeroboam do?
Sets up altars or temples.
Well, he builds 2 golden calves. He has constructed, I guess that's the right word, or he has 2 golden calves fashioned. He puts one in the northern part of Israel, and then he puts the other one in the southern part of Israel, of the northern kingdom. And then he tells Israel, this is your God. This is how we're going to worship Jehovah, with these golden calves. Just like they did at the foot of Sinai, when Aaron constructed a golden calf, and they said, this is the God who brought you out of Egypt. Remember, Moses comes down off the mountain, and there's a big sex orgy going on at the bottom of the hill. Well, Jeroboam does the same thing. And so now, if you're a godly Israelite, and you've been told by your king that you've got to worship in the north. If you live up here, you've got to worship up here. You can no longer worship in Jerusalem. What are you going to do?
Okay.
Huh? What are you going to do?
Revolt. Or run
You're
away.
probably fine with it. Yeah.
What's that?
You're probably fine with it.
Okay, you're missing the point.
Go worship in Jerusalem. You obey God.
But how are you going to do? Well, how are you going to do that? Your king has just told you can't do that anymore. He is giving you 2 golden calves to worship at. He has told Israel, this is where you will worship.
You sneak off.
What?
You have to sneak away.
Sneak away and do what?
Go to Jerusalem.
So basically 3 times a year you're sneaking away to go to Jerusalem? Is that what you're saying? Okay. You guys really need to read the text. Yes.
Didn't the people in the north move down to the south?
The people in the north, in other words, those people who want to worship Jehovah, true believers, they relocate to the south. So if you're a true believer in Jehovah and you're in Israel, you're going to move south. You're going to relocate. So in other words, there will be representatives of these 10 tribes down in the southern kingdom now. They have uprooted where they live, and now they're living down here.
So they didn't have to disguise themselves or anything.
They left. No, they moved. They relocated. In other words, they couldn't worship the way they couldn't worship Jehovah, so they moved to the kingdom where Jehovah was recognized as. In other words, God told them how they are to worship, so they moved so that they could worship that way. If you were an idolater living in Judah, what would you do? Because true worship of Jehovah is in the south, but if you're an idolater, what are you going to do?
You'll probably go to the northern kingdom.
Yeah, they moved north. Idolaters moved north. In other words, to get away from those stringent law codes that Jehovah imposed, they moved north to Israel because they wanted to enjoy those sex orgies and all that stuff that, worshiping the other gods, because that's what it degenerated into. They moved north. True believers in Jehovah moved south to Judah. So now, and this is not saying all the believers moved south, but a good many of them did. And not all the idolaters in the south moved north, but a good many of them did. So in other words, there was a larger proportion of believers here than there was up here. Make sense? Okay, that's in about 1 Kings chapters 11, 12, 13. Basically, that's what happens in that time right there. And during that time where, who was king in the north? Jeroboam. Who's king in the south? Okay, Austin, who is king of the north? Who's king of the south?
Jeroboam is king of the north, Rehoboam is king of the south.
Great, okay. When did they become king? Anybody know? When, Kenan?
931 BC.
931 BC. Okay. When did Solomon die?
930,
Speak up.
931 BC.
931 BC, Solomon dies, okay. Back in those days, you did not retire. Basically, you gave up being king when you were dead or near death. And then, like David, just before he died, he appointed Solomon as a successor. Solomon was a little bit smarter. He appointed Rehoboam to be king in his place. So there wasn't a big clash or a battle to see who's going to be king in the south. And of course, God had chosen this person. Yeah.
Quick side note. What did a calf symbolize?
The what?
The golden calf? Like, why did they always make a golden calf?
They were familiar with that out of Egypt already. Because of calf worship, worshiping Apis, the bull, was a big deal in Egypt, and they still carried all those memories of. Remember, during the period of the judges and all that stuff, there was a huge problem of idolatry during the period of the judges. That's why, remember, the Israelites rejected God as being their king. And the problem was Baal worship, calf worship. In other words, they just couldn't get rid of their idols. Well, they would not get rid of their idols. The Canaanites stayed in the land as a judgment because they didn't obey God. And then, of course, they started marrying the daughters of the Canaanites. They were enticed to worship other gods, and God had to continually judge them. Okay. By the way, why did Solomon lose the kingdom? Anybody know? Yes?
Because he didn't remain faithful to God.
Yeah,
Turned
well,
away to idolatry and other wives.
and why did he turn away to idolatry?
Because he multiplied his wives. And
Well, how come having more than one wife makes you not worship God?
because their gods, he'd be enticed to follow the gods that they were worshiping.
That's right. His wife, he married a lot of foreign women. Like, he would make alliances with other countries, of course, which they weren't supposed to do. And they would, like, say, he would marry an Ammonitess or something like that, and she would bring in Moloch or Chemosh or something like that. And so now there's an idol to Moloch and Chemosh in Jerusalem. And Solomon first tolerated it, and then he started worshiping. And so God, in anger, said that he was going to tear the kingdom away from him. God promised him long life if he would obey the commandments of the Lord. He promised him long life. Solomon died a relatively young man, say maybe before he got to 70 years old, because he literally acted like a lecherous old man. Dirty old man, if I can use that modern expression. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and erase the information here, and then we're going to take a 10-minute break, and then we're going to learn how to tell time in the books of the Kings. Okay. So now, does everybody see we have gone past the time when Asa is long dead, right? Does everybody see that? He's been dead for like 18 years or something like that. So now, since we are past Asa, we're now going to start talking about the kings of the southern kingdom again. So now you'll find in 1 Kings chapter 22, verse 41, it says, let's look at verse 39. Now the rest of the acts of Ahab, all that he did, the ivory house which he built, and all the cities that he built, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel? So Ahab rested with his fathers, and Ahaziah his son reigned in his place. Then it says Jehoshaphat, okay? Jehoshaphat, the son of Asa, had become king over Judah in the 4th year of Ahab, king of Israel. So now we're keeping time with Jehoshaphat. So here's Jehoshaphat. And he becomes king in it says the 4th year of Ahab. So Ahab is going to have like 18 or so years left. So you realize Jehoshaphat and Ahab are going to be king in the north and the south together for quite some time. And unfortunately, they become very good friends. And after the break, we're going to find out how bad this was. But let me read the account of Jehoshaphat, okay? Jehoshaphat, the son of Asa, had become king over Judah in the 4th year of Ahab, king of Israel. Jehoshaphat was 35 years old when he became king, and he reigned 25 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Azubah, the daughter of Shilhi, and he walked in all the ways of his father Asa. In other words, he was a good king. Now the rest of the acts of Jehoshaphat, the might that he showed and how he made war, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah? And the rest of the perverted persons who remained in the days of his father Asa, he banished them from the land. It mentions some stuff that Jehoshaphat did. Jehoshaphat made merchant ships to go to Ophir for gold, but they never sailed, for the ships were wrecked at Ezion-Geber. By the way, he made a treaty with Ahab to build a fleet of ships, and God did not like the fact that he made a treaty with Ahab, so God destroyed the fleet. basically. Then Ahaziah, the son of Ahab, said to Jehoshaphat, "Let my servants go with your servants in the ships," but Jehoshaphat would not. And Jehoshaphat rested with his fathers and was buried with his fathers in the city of David his father. Then Jehoram his son reigned in his place. Okay, and then now we've gone past. So now we're going to be. Remember, we've read the account of Jehoshaphat, 25 years, but Ahab's dead, right? Because he became king in the fourth year of Ahab or something like that. He reigns 25 years, so he's gone past Ahab. Now we go back up to the north again. You see that? Are you sure? Okay. Because I'm going to erase this during the break, and then there's what happens between these two guys and their descendants is so important that it changes, literally almost changes all of biblical history. So go ahead and take a 10-minute break. We're going to focus on around Ahab and Jehoshaphat and their kids. And you're going to notice, I want to get to a place where probably the most confusing place in Kings, in 2 Kings, actually 2 Kings. It is so confusing that people totally get lost. And the reason is going to be because remember Jehoshaphat and Ahab, remember Jehoshaphat becomes a king about the third or fourth year of Ahab. So in other words, Ahab's got like another 18, let me change this here. Let's read about Jehoshaphat, just to review him real quick. Jehoshaphat, the son of Asa, had become king over Judah in the fourth year of Ahab, king of Israel. Now that means it can be any time in the fourth year. Like for instance, I had my 65th birthday in June 26th. I had my 65th birthday. What year am I in? By the way, Lauren Salinas sat in my Biblical Old Testament survey class in my 66th year. Say, it was Lauren's 21st year, but she sat in my class in my 66th year. It doesn't mean I'm 66 years old, it just means I'm working on my I'm 65 plus so many months. You see how that works? So in other words, in the fourth year of Ahab, in other words, he's been king for 3 years and some months. It doesn't mean he's been a king for 4 years. It's in his fourth year. Like I'm 65, but I'm not 66, but I'm 65 and 4 months old.
Gotcha.
4 months and 1 day old, okay? So he's a king for a total, Ahab's a king for a total of 22 years. And so for 3+ years, in other words, his fourth, I'll just put his fourth year. In his fourth year, Jehoshaphat becomes a king. It's just like, when a baby is born, how long does it take, when a baby is born, how long does it take before the baby is 1 year old?
1 year.
It takes a full year. But do you understand that the baby is in his first year? But he's not a year old yet, okay. So in the fourth year of Ahab, Jehoshaphat becomes king and he reigns for 25 years. So obviously, you're going to see that Jehoshaphat, his reign goes beyond Ahab's, right? You all see that? So in other words, we're going to be going back to the northern kingdom. You see that? Okay. So let's look at Jehoshaphat one more time. Jehoshaphat, by the way, is 1 Kings 22, verse 41. Jehoshaphat, the son of Asa, had become king over Judah in the fourth year of Ahab, king of Israel. Jehoshaphat was 35 years old when he became king, and he reigned 25 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Azubah, the daughter of Shilhi. He walked in the ways of his father Asa. He was a good king. Jehoshaphat rested with his fathers and was buried with his fathers in the city of David his father. Then Jehoram his son reigned in his place. Now we know, of course, that it just mentions that Jehoram, say he dies here, and then his son is going to be Jehoram. So I can just it kind of clues you in who's going to be the next king down here. But we're not going to talk about them now, because we have to go up to the northern kingdom. So now we get in, like say in 1 Kings chapter 22, verse 51, it says Ahaziah reigns in Israel. Remember, we've gone past the years of Ahab. So now, because we've gone past, we go back up here. You see that, Lauren? I know you're coming in late, but once you pass when Ahab is king, it's true. We start off with Rehoboam, the first king, and you got Jeroboam, the first king in the north, Jeroboam, the first king in the south. We start with Jeroboam. He reigns for 22 years, and until we talk about his life. But then now we're going to talk about Rehoboam, and he only reigned for 17 years, so there's still 5 years left on the first king. So we're going to talk about his son. And so we work our way that way until we get past the first king. And we're all the way up now to Ahab. In the 4th year of Ahab, Jehoshaphat becomes king, but he's going to be a king for 25 years, which is going to be about, since it's 25 years and he starts in the 4th, he's going to go about 7 years past Ahab. Do you see that? So now, because of that, Ahab hasn't, because we went past, now we start talking about the guy up north again, about the kings in the north. So now we have a new king up here, and we're going to have, in verse 51, it says, Ahaziah reigns in Israel. So Ahaziah, the son of Ahab, became king over Israel and Samaria in the 17th year of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, and he reigned 2 years in Israel. He did evil in the sight of the Lord, so he reigns for 2 years. So here's Ahaziah. He reigns for 2 years. He does evil in the sight of the Lord, and he dies. You notice we haven't passed the reign of, remember he had, he was in the 18th year. Jehoshaphat, even after he dies, he's still got like 6 years to go. So we're going to talk about the next guy up here now. So now we're going to go to a new book, 2 Kings. It talks about, God judges Ahaziah, and it gives a little bit about him. That's basically the story about, he says, go inquire of Beelzebub, the god of Ekron. Remember, and Elijah comes and pronounces judgment on him. We're skipping over all that. All we're interested in is how do we keep time? Because you can read the stories, but to put it in its context, you got to know how to tell time. So we had that story about Ahaziah. Then we go back to Elijah again, remember, because of the prophets. So you got to go through the story of Elijah and Elisha in 2 Kings. And so you have Ahaziah. And then in 2 Kings chapter 3, verse 1, 2 Kings 3:1. Now Jehoram, the son of Ahab, became king over Israel at Samaria in the 18th year of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, and reigned 12 years. So now we have another king, Jehoram. Now here's where it's going to start getting complicated. He reigns for 12 years. His name is Jehoram. By the way, the abbreviation for Jehoram is Joram. That is the abbreviation. They're the same person. So he becomes king in Samaria. But you notice on your handout here, we have Omri, Omri's son is Ahab. He marries Jezebel. But Jezebel and Ahab, 3 of their 70 plus children Ahab has over 70 sons. But 2 of them are mentioned. Remember, Ahaziah becomes a king, but the next guy that becomes king is Joram, his brother. Remember, Ahaziah was only a king for 2 years, so Joram, his younger brother, becomes king in his place. Remember, Joram is Jehoram, and he's going to reign for 12 years. Now remember we had read earlier that Jehoshaphat and Ahab became very close friends. In other words, there was a time when there was a unity between the southern kingdom and the northern kingdom. In other words, they were on friendly terms. God did not like that. But nevertheless, there was a good king in alliance with a bad king. In other words, Jehoshaphat was unequally yoked with an unbeliever. So we all understand now that Ahab's second son, Ahaziah and Jehoram or Joram are both Ahab's sons, but he's only reigns for 2 years. Elijah pronounces a death sentence on him. He dies after 2 years, and now Jehoram becomes king, and he reigns for 12 years. Everybody got that? Mm-hmm. Okay. It's going to get complicated, so that's why I'm trying to get you every step of the way here. Okay. Now he reigns for 12 years. So as we look at Jehoram, he becomes king in the 18th year of Jehoshaphat. So in the 18th year of Jehoshaphat, if we got to move this over a little bit, just try to keep it sort of linear so I don't confuse you because it's like in the wrong place. So in the 18th year of Jehoshaphat.
So there were two Jehorams reigning at the same time.
Wait till we get there, okay? Don't confuse people. This is why I'm building up to this, because I want you to see why it happens, okay?
Okay.
So, we've talked about Jehoram. Now we're going to go back to Judah, and now we're going to talk about Jehoram, the son of Jehoshaphat, okay? So in chapter 8, verse 17, chapter 8, 2 Kings chapter 8. Remember, the reason why we're going to have so many chapters is because we're talking about this. The story is focused on Elijah and Elisha. So we're reading about the prophets that had the dealings with the house of Ahab for the most part. Because remember, Elijah and Elisha were prophets to the northern kingdom. They were set against the Baal worship and the ungodliness against the northern kingdom. So they were both from the northern kingdom, and their prophecies were against these kings. You all see that? Austin? Okay. Because this is going to be important if you want to understand 1st and 2nd Kings. If you don't understand this, you can end up thoroughly confused, and most people that I talk to, they're utterly confused when they go through this because it just doesn't make sense to them. So now in chapter 8, verse 16, now it says Jehoram reigns in Judah. Okay, now in the 5th year of Joram, the son of Ahab. Okay, so we have Joram right here. So in the 5th year, in other words, in Jehoram's 5th year, Jehoram reigns in down here. So you got, and by the way, what's the shortened version of Jehoram? Joram. Now, the king in the north and the king in the south, they got the same names. So if you don't remember who they are, you can get lost pretty easy. And then we'll ask ourselves, why do they have the same names? Why would that be? So anyway, let's read about Jehoram's reign. Now, in the 5th year of Joram, the son of Ahab, the king of Israel, Jehoshaphat having been king of Judah, Jehoram, the son of Jehoshaphat, began to reign as king of Judah. He was 32 years old when he became king, and he reigned 8 years in Jerusalem, and he walked in the ways of the kings of Israel, just as the house of Ahab had done, for the daughter of Ahab was his wife. So, in other words, these guys got so friendly, they bring their kids together, and lo and behold, on your handout here, turns out that Athaliah, the daughter of Ahab and Jezebel, married Jehoram. So, in other words, Athaliah has a brother named Jehoram, and she marries a Jehoram. Now, by the way, that's true in my family. I have a son named Bob, and I have a daughter named Sharon, and I have a daughter named Susie. My son Bobby married Susie. My daughter Susie married Bobby. It was just confusing to the point where my daughter Sharon said, wow, my kids, all they're going to have is Uncle Bob's and Aunt Susie's. And it's really true. That's says they've got 2 Uncle Bob's and they've got 3 Aunt Susie's. No other names. Yeah. Yeah.
So do you think they named their kids like the same because they're like such friends? Or like, oh, let's name both of our kids the same thing.
Well, you don't even have to do that. Haven't you ever named somebody after? Nobody here has children. I named my son. Actually, his name's Robert Samuel. I named him. My brother's name is Joseph Samuel. So I named, and my brother-in-law is named Robert Domenico. So I named my first son Robert Samuel after my brother Sam and my brother-in-law Bob Domenico. So my son became Robert Samuel, although he only goes by Bob. Okay, so just picture that, and I'm sure all of you, like Lauren, I don't know, maybe you're named after a sister, an aunt, or maybe your parents just like the name. But there's a good chance if you have siblings in your family that somebody's may be named after somebody else in a relative or something like that. I mean, it's true in a lot of families where you get, I'm named after, for instance, after my Uncle Jim, James McConnell. I'm named after him. Okay, so that's what happens here. Ahab's daughter, Athaliah, marries Jehoram. So anyway, Athaliah and Jehoram get married. So in your handout here, you'll notice if you mark it, the daughter of Jezebel and Ahab is Athaliah, and she's married to Jehoram of the family of David. And the good did not make the evil better. The evil tainted the good. And in other words, now there is an evil king in the north and the south. So now, in other words, we've had a row of good kings. We had Asa, we had Jehoshaphat, but now we got Jehoram in the south, we got Jehoram in the north, and they both walk after Ahab and Jezebel. So in other words, now Baal worship is being introduced in the southern kingdom too. They did exactly what God said to do. Don't intermarry with unbelievers, because you'll become just like them. And so that now happens in the southern kingdom. Okay, so you're going to go through a number of chapters here where you've literally got to have a program of who's on first, who's on. Anybody watching the World Series? Okay. I mean, who's on first, who's on second? I mean, it's hard to tell who is being talked about, because the passage will go from Jehoram to Joram. If the passage is talking about Joram down here, it'll refer to this guy as Jehoram, but if it talks about this guy first, it'll call him Joram, and if it's referring to the other guy, it'll call this guy Jehoram. So in other words, you got all those names are being used interchangeably, and so you've got to keep track of who's being discussed. So, but you can, if you just slow down your reading as you're going through here, you can keep track, because you're going to discover when God raises a man named Jehu, the son of Jehoshaphat, not the same Jehoshaphat, but a guy up in the north. He's anointed by Elisha, the prophet, not Elijah, but Elisha. And he's told to destroy the whole house of Ahab, and he's going to kill he's going to kill off Ahab's 70 sons and all of his relatives, and this guy or his son is going to be visiting his family up north, and lo and behold, he's going to get killed too. So in other words, part of the, actually his son is going to get killed. And I want to move on there because it comes to the point where the line of David is nearly wiped out. It's basically, I guess in the history of Israel, if you look at it from a spiritual perspective, it looks like Satan's going to win because the prophecy stated that David would always have a man on the throne. And that almost doesn't happen. Historically speaking, from our viewpoint, it's almost like the house of David's going to get wiped out because all the male descendants will be killed off. Almost, okay. So now, I got to be moving along. I want to get through these, just the hard parts so you can keep track of time. It says, Ahaziah, son of Jehoram, is going to be the 12th, in the 12th year of Joram, son of Ahab, he's going to become king. Anyway, in 2 Kings chapter 8, verses 25, now it says, Ahaziah reigns in Judah. So now we have verse 25. In the 12th year of Joram, the son of Ahab, king of Israel, Ahaziah, the son of Jehoram, king of Judah, began to reign. Ahaziah was 22 years old when he became king, and he reigned 1 year in Jerusalem. Okay, then it says, his mother's name was Athaliah, the granddaughter of Omri, king of Israel. So Ahaziah, see, Jehoram was it 12 years or something like that? And now we got Ahaziah.
It was 8 years.
8 years? Okay. He reigns 1 year, correct? Okay, now that's Jehoram or Joram's son, Ahaziah. Who's his mother? Athaliah. His mother is Athaliah. So, in other words, the daughter of Ahab and Jezebel is this guy's mother. So now Ahab and Jezebel are basically the grandparents of the king in the southern kingdom, as well as up here, as well as being, in other words, they're the ones that are, basically both kings in the north and the south are descended from Ahab and Jezebel. And Athaliah is the mother of Ahaziah. He only reigns for 1 year because he's going to be murdered. Okay, so let's look at his life here. His mother's name was Athaliah, the granddaughter of Omri, king of Israel. By the way, they say Omri because Ahab was of the house of Omri. His father established a dynasty, and it went on for about 4 generations. On your sheet here, on this one right here, if you look in the kings of Israel, you'll see in the 4th dynasty, you'll say Omri, Ahab, Azariah, and Jehoram. You see that? Mm-hmm. Okay. In other words, remember there's lots of us, and each dynasty ends with assassinations. There's a lot of murder and stuff like that. If you're in the king of Israel, you hope you live, okay? Anyway, let's read about Azariah in Judah. So his mother's name was Athaliah, the granddaughter of Omri, king of Israel. He walked in the way of the house of Ahab. He did evil in the sight of the Lord like the house of Ahab, for he was the son-in-law of the house of Ahab. In other words, King Ahab was his father-in-law. Now he went with Joram, the son of Ahab. In other words, he's going out with his uncle. You see that? Ahaziah is the nephew of Jehoram. Okay. Remember, this is like a family affair now. He went with Joram, the son of Ahab, to war against Hazael, king of Syria, at Ramoth Gilead, and the Syrians wounded Joram. Then King Joram went back to Jezreel to recover from the wounds from which the Syrians had inflicted on him at Ramah. When he fought against Hazael, king of Syria, and Ahaziah, the son of Jehoram, king of Judah, went down to see Joram, the son of Ahab, in Jezreel because he was sick. It's at this point in chapter 9 where Jehu, if you look at, actually it's Yehu in Hebrew, not Yahoo, but Yehu. He's going to be the king. He's going to start a new dynasty. But God commissions him to destroy and kill off the entire house of Ahab. who happens to be, of course, this guy too, right? So basically, remember it says Jehoram is wounded, so he's going to his summer place where he can recover from his wounds, and Ahaziah is going to go up to visit him. And on the way there, he runs into Jehu. After Jehu destroys Jehoram and everybody there, Ahaziah is just riding along and says, "Oh, I'm here. I'm related to the king. I'm here to see my uncle." "Oh, you're related to Ahab too," and he kills him. So basically, that's what happens in chapter 9. So anyway, in chapter 9, verse 14, so Jehu, let me read the first part of what Jehu does. Elisha the prophet, called one of the sons of the prophets, said to him, "Get yourself ready, take this flask of oil in your hand, and go to Ramoth Gilead. Now when you arrive at that place, look there for Jehu the son of Jehoshaphat, the son of Nimshi." In other words, it's not Jehoshaphat the son of Asa, it's Jehoshaphat the son of Nimshi. It's like, I'm not the only Jim in the world. You know, there's a lot of, I know like 3 Laurens, so just because you see a name in the Bible doesn't mean it's the same person, okay? I think I presently know 4 Laurens, okay? I know 3 Amandas that I'm conversant with right now. I have 2 nieces named Kim. You know, I got 25 nieces and nephews, so some of them have the same names. Okay, so anyway, there's going to be in verse 14 of chapter 9, it says, Joram of Israel is killed. So Jehu, the son of Jehoshaphat, the son of Nimshi, conspired against Joram. Now Joram had been defending Ramoth Gilead, he and all Israel, against Hazael, king of Syria. But King Joram had returned to Jezreel to recover from his wounds. So anyway, to make a long story short, Jehu is going to destroy with great zeal the house of Ahab. Remember, he kills Jezebel and everything. In other words, he's basically making sure that he destroys everybody, and not only them, but actually destroys all the Baal worshippers too. Remember, he tricks all the Baal worshippers to go into the temple. He locks the door and he sets the place on fire and kills all the rest of the Baal worshippers. So in other words, he not only did he get rid of the house of Ahab, Jezebel and Ahab, and all of their children. In other words, he executed 70 of Ahab's sons. In other words, the entire line of Ahab and Jezebel was exterminated, except for one person, Athaliah, who's down in the south. Now her son Ahaziah gets killed, so he's only king for a year. Kind of like Queen for a Day. Remember that show a long time ago? Oh, you guys wouldn't remember that. So anyway, then we go back to Jehu, and so as we look at the kings here, we're going to have Jehu after here. Jehu, okay. So then we've got back up there because we've gone past these guys here. And you can read about him in chapter 9, verse 1 through 10:35. He's anointed by the king of by Elisha the prophet. He's commissioned by God to destroy the house of Ahab. So Joram of Israel is killed. Jezebel is killed. Ahab's 70 sons, the rest of Ahab's family, and Baal worshippers are all killed, and all the way going through chapter 10. So Jehu reigned 28 years and he died. So he reigns for 28 years. 28 years.
He didn't live righteously though, right?
No. He got rid of Baal worship, but what was the old standby? He went back to worshiping the golden calves.
Because he didn't tear them down.
He didn't tear them down, he worshiped them. He worshipped at the golden calves. He says, we need to get back to that old-time religion, the golden calves. Remember, it had already been there for like 150 years or so. I mean, they've been calf worshiping that long. So now we go to Judah, and so in chapter 11, it says Athaliah is going to reign in Judah. When Athaliah, oh, by the way, we read about the death of Jehu in chapter 10, verses 32 and 34. Now the rest of the acts of Jehu, all that he did and all his might, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel? So Jehu rested with his fathers, and they buried him in Samaria. Then Jehoahaz, his son, reigned in his place, and the period that Jehu reigned over Israel and Samaria was 28 years. Chapter 11. When Athaliah, the mother of Ahaziah, saw that her son was dead, she arose and destroyed all the royal heirs. Okay, remember that story? So in other words, now there's not going to be a king in Israel. She's going to reign for 7 years or something. So we have Athaliah.
6 years.
6 years. So she's going to be a queen. She's going to reign for 6 years, and the first thing she does is destroy all the royal seed. Wipes them out. Remember Ahab? She could have thought, well, all the royal seed was killed up here. My whole family's been wiped out. I'm going to retaliate. I'm going to wipe them out down here too. But think of, there was a prophecy where, remember, the seed of the woman, and then in the 2 Samuel chapter 7, David would never lack a man to sit on the throne. But she wipes out almost all of them. So in other words, however many there were, she destroys all of them, she thinks. So anyway, she saw that her son was dead. She arose and destroyed all the royal heirs. But Jehosheba, the daughter of King Joram, sister of Ahaziah, in other words, it's a family affair again, took Joash, the son of Ahaziah, and stole him away from among the king's sons who were being murdered, and they hid him and his nurse in the bedroom from Athaliah so that he was not killed. So he was hidden with her in the house of the Lord for 6 years, while Athaliah reigned over the land. So he's just a baby, and so basically he snuck off to the temple, and he's going to be raised by the priest in the temple for 6 years, unbeknownst to Athaliah. Yeah.
Now, are these Athaliah's own kids she was killing?
Probably some of hers, but not all the royal seed. In other words, anybody that it was possible for them to be king, nephews, brothers. It just says everybody related to David was killed that she could find. In other words, that was in that strict line who was eligible to be the king. They were all killed, except one. So anyway, Ahaziah's son, Joash, or Jehoash, because there's the long version and the short version, he gets saved as a baby. He's whisked off the temple where he's raised for 6 years. Okay. So anyway, in verse 4 of chapter 11, we're going to continue, and now we're going to have where it's going to talk about Joash. Joash, or we have nicknames too, right? They did too. They had shortened versions of their names too. It really gets confusing when their name is actually changed by somebody else, or God changes their name on top of it. It gets confusing towards the end there. That's why I have this handout here, so it'll make sense to you. It's bad enough you have Jehoiakim, Jehoiakin, and then Jehoiakim gets, his name gets changed to Jeconiah, but God says, don't you put my name in his name, call him Coniah. I don't want my name even associated with his name. So just call him Coniah, not Jeconiah. Because the Yah is the abbreviation for Jehovah, and it says, I don't want my name associated with him. Anyway, you get the idea there. Anyway, in the 7th year of Jehoiada, Jehoiada sent and brought the captains of the hundreds of the bodyguards, etc., and they plan a coup where they're going to assassinate Athaliah. She's going to, we call it an assassination, call it an execution, but they're going to get rid of her because she's a wicked lady. Very wicked. Yeah. So anyway, she gets, in verse 13 of chapter 11, when Athaliah heard the noise of the escorts and the people, she came to the people in the temple of the Lord. When she looked, there was a king standing by a pillar according to custom, and the leaders and trumpeters were by the king. All the people of the land were rejoicing and blowing trumpets. So Athaliah tore her clothes and cried out, treason, treason. Okay. She's a murderess herself, right? And so anyway, Jehoiada the priest commanded the captains of the hundreds, the officers of the army, and said to them, take her outside under guard and slay with the sword whoever follows her. Anybody that's loyal with her, kill them too. So anyway, then so Jehoash then is going to become the next king. Okay, so that kind of like, well, you're not quite through the hard part yet. In chapter 13, we have Jehoahaz reigns in Israel. So anyway, let's look at Jehoash. He reigned 40 years, chapter 12, verse 1. He's 7 years old when he becomes king, 11:21. And his mother was Zibiah of Beersheba. So, in other words, Ahaziah, his wife's name, was Zibiah, right? So anyway,
Is Jehoash the same as Joash?
yes. See, when they start using these nicknames, they like say with these two guys, when they got the same name and they got the same nicknames, and the scripture goes back and forth using them. If the focus is on Jehoram, they'll call him Joram, and they'll refer to the other guy as Jehoram. And then if they talk about this guy, they'll call him Joram, then they'll refer to the other guy as Jehoram. Like I say, you got to keep your program straight. It's the most confusing place in the book of Kings there. Almost, well, yeah, it ranks up right up there with being one of the most confusing places in Scripture. So anyway, Jehoash is Joash. And anyway, let's look at, let's go to chapter 14, verse 1. We have Jehoahaz reigns in Israel. By the way, it's like Jehoah, and then it's Ahaz, Jehoahaz, if you want to kind of pronounce it. Remember, there's going to be a king Ahaz in Israel later on, too. So anyway, Amaziah, the son of Joash, will be king of Judah in 14:1. So it states, in the second year of Joash, the son of Jehoahaz, king of Israel, Amaziah, the son of Joash, king of Judah, became king. He was 25 years old when he became king. So he's 25 years old when he becomes king, and he reigned 29 years in Jerusalem. His mother was Jehoiadan of Jerusalem. He was a good king. Amaziah, by the way, was defeated in war by Jehoash, king of Israel. And Amaziah, son of Joash, king of Judah, lived 15 years after the death of Jehoash, the son of Jehoahaz, king of Israel. In other words, you just start following the names. I don't have time to put them all up because I want to get to the end of I got to get to the end of 2 Kings today. Anyway, Amaziah, son of Joash, he was killed. Anyway, he was murdered in Lachish. In other words, he was executed. His own people executed him in 14. I know I'm not being very clear. 14:19 here. Amaziah, verse 17. Amaziah, the son of Joash, king of Judah, lived 15 years after the death of Jehoash, the son of Jehoahaz, king of Israel. Now, just the fact I'm reading all these names, if you're not following along in the program, you're already forgetting who's who now what, because there's just so many Joash, Jehoash. I mean, it's just, that's why I gave you a program. So you can follow along. And it actually gives the hard dates when they were actually ruling in the land. Now the rest of the acts of Amaziah, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah? And they formed a conspiracy against him in Jerusalem, and he fled to Lachish, but they sent after him to Lachish and killed him there. Then they brought him on horses, etc., etc. Okay. Now it's going to go back to Jeroboam II, who reigns in Israel. And then it talks about him. Jeroboam II isn't related to Jeroboam I. He just has the same name, so they call him the second. He was a descendant of Jehu, not Jeroboam. Then we got Zechariah. We got Azariah reigns in Judah. Then we got Zechariah. Oh, let's look at Azariah. He's an important guy. When we start getting to the major prophets and stuff like that, at the very start of the book of Isaiah, it's going to talk about, chapter 6, it's going to talk about Uzziah, or Uzziah, you might say. Uzziah is Azariah. That's his nickname. So in other words, he has two names, and you need to know that too. Anyway, let's talk about Azariah. Okay. Azariah, king of Judah. So, in the 27th year of Jeroboam, king of Israel, Azariah, the son of Amaziah, king of Judah, became king. He was 16 years old when he became king, and he reigned 52 years in Jerusalem. His mother name was Jechaliah of Jerusalem. He did what was right in the sight of the Lord. Now, his nickname, his other name is Uzziah. By the way, Uzziah means, all of you know what an Uzi is? A machine gun, an Uzi. Uzi is the word for power in Hebrew. Uzziah means the power of Jehovah. Okay. Ancient Hebrew and modern Hebrew, same language. Okay. So anyway, what's unusual about this king is that the Lord struck this king with leprosy. So this was the only king that was a leper for the remainder of his life. So Uzziah had to stay separate from everybody. You were going to say something?
Is Uzi synonymous with
You mean Uzziah?
Dunamos?
You mean Uzziah?
Yeah. Is it synonymous with Dunamos?
With Dunamos?
For power?
Yeah, Greek, Dunamos. Yeah, that'd be pretty synonymous, I guess. But if you use Dunamos, don't make the mistake and say it's the dynamite of God. The modern word dynamite comes from Dunamos, but they are, we take an ancient name to name something else, like dynamite, comes from the Greek word dunamos. So some preachers will talk about the dynamite of God. That is about the worst exegesis you could possibly do, where you take a modern term and throw it back into the text. It is as bad as you can get. Okay. And probably all of you have probably heard somebody do that sometime or another. You don't take a modern word and throw its modern meaning back into the ancient language. So you can't say the dynamite of God. First of all, dynamite blows things up. God is the God of order, puts things together. The power of God, it's being different. Anyway, so Azariah reigns in Judah. And then we have Jotham, the son of, it's during this time that we're going to go through a whole list of kings when we get to chapter 15. We're going to go through like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different kings of Israel. Okay? We're going to have, after we talk about Azariah, remember, he's a king for 52 years. So we're going to go through a lot of kings up here while Uzziah is king for 52 years. There's going to be a lot of kings up here. But this kingdom up here is falling apart. It's getting towards the tail end of its existence. So anyway, we have Zechariah, the son of Jeroboam, chapter 15, in the 38th year of Azariah, or Uzziah. We have Shallum, son of Jabesh, chapter 15 again, the 39th year of Uzziah. In other words, Zechariah was king for 1 year. If you see this name here, here's a king of the northern kingdom. Can anybody pronounce that? Huh? Menahem. Is that what all you would say? Menahem? That's how you say it in English. Does any of you remember a prime minister in Israel? It would have been when you guys were younger. If you know some Israeli history, there was a prime minister of Israel who's called Menachem Begin. Ever any of you heard? This is actually Menachem. That's actually how you pronounce it. I was just, like Menachem, in other words, he was named after, it's a Hebrew name, he was just given that same name. It just so happens that there was a king of Israel with the name of Menachem, but of course we say Menahem, but, okay. Did I ever tell you how when I teach ladies Hebrew, the hardest part I have is this letter right here. It looks like this. That's the letter, and it's a chet, okay. And typically, I tell people when you pronounce it, you pronounce it. It's deep in the back of your throat, and when you say it, when you hear them, it sounds like they're spitting or something like that. Usually, when I'm teaching women to do that, because in our country, women are very proper and stuff like that, so they'll say, "Okay, say the letter." Okay, and I usually be verbose, say the letter. They'll go, "Head," okay, because they don't want, what do you think? When I always say, when you get somebody close that speaks Hebrew, just stand back a little bit, because when they're saying this letter, there's saliva coming out of their mouth and they're doing it, so you stand back a little bit. So anyway, in our culture, women don't like to. They go, "Cat." So you're getting them. So I actually say just use a K. Just say, give it a K. Just say cat. So you don't have to say it farther back in your throat where you're spitting on somebody's shirt or something like that. I always found that interesting, because the ladies were very so proper when they were cat. Just cover their mouths when they say that letter. So they're talking like speaking Hebrew, and their hands over their mouth so they don't spit on anybody. I always found it humorous. Anyway, you have Menachem, the son of Gadai, in the 39th year of Azariah. Pekahiah, son of Menachem, the 50th year of Azariah, and there was a Pekahiah and a king Pekah, no relation, they're not related to each other, son of Remaliah, in the 52nd year of Azariah. And he reigned 20 years. And during that time, Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, starts Israel's captivity. So in other words, in the reign of Uzziah, or Azariah, the northern captivity begins, okay? The son of, then we go back to Judah in chapter 15. Then we have Jotham, the son of Uzziah. I got to get through this. Because I want to look at the handout right at the very end here. Is there anybody that would have any question on how to keep time in 1st and 2nd Kings? Remember, if you're talking about a king up here, they reference the kings down here. If you're talking about the kings down here, they keep time by referencing the kings up here by saying it was in the 5th year of so-and-so's reign, or if you're talking about these guys, you'll say it was in the 10th year of so-and-so's reign. Okay, so in other words, you're always finding out in the scripture where they are. The only thing you don't have is the hard date. So the hard dates have been figured out, first of all, by 1 Kings 6:1. I hope you all got that right in the test. And a hard date would be given, like, in other words, in history, the date that Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, conquered and carried the southern kingdom into captivity. We can date that with great certainty to 586, 587 BC. So you can start off with a date there, you can work your way back. And in fact, it's that date that ties it in with Bible history and with secular history. You can work your way all the way back to 931 BC for when the kings started. And of course, if you know that date, 1 Kings 6:1 makes sense, because now you can go all the way back to the Exodus. In other words, you can tell time from using our clock and work your way back. And of course, all your dates on here are BC dates. So in other words, it's the way we keep time, so you can figure out how long ago it was. So anyway, we get to a point now where now we're at 721 BC. What happened there? 721 BC. Yes.
Syria captures Israel.
Or say the Assyrian Israel is defeated and they are deported out of the land of Israel and they are taken captive to the Assyrian Empire. Yes.
So are we skipping ahead now?
I just read, I probably went by too fast. Remember I read a list of 5 Israelite northern kings? Well, that takes you to the end of the kings of Israel. Remember I read, in their days, Tiglath-Pileser started the deportation process where most of the people in Israel in the northern kingdom are being deported to Assyria. In other words, they're destroying national unity. They're moving people out and moving other people in of other cultures so that there is no longer a national unity. And remember, it's during that time that the people that are imported in marry what's left of the Israelites, and then we have that race of the Samaritans that rises up at that point that the Jews didn't like in the days of Jesus. Am I going too fast? I mean, I have to go this fast or I won't finish 2 Kings. So remember the last kings of Israel, Zechariah, then Shallum, then Menachem, then Pekahiah, then Pekah. And if you look on you can read it right down your list here in Israel. Jeroboam II, Zechariah, Shallum, Menachem, Pekahiah, Pekah, and then the last king being Hoshea. What?
Sorry.
What? Pekah? I just mentioned the same guy twice. Yeah.
No, it's just just from you heard of Pokemon?
Yeah. That's right. I remember. Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. I wasn't thinking along those lines. Anyway, Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, starts Israel's captivity. So in chapter 15, verse 29, 15:29. In the days of Pekah, king of Israel, Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, came and took Ijon, Abel, Beth, Maacah, Jonah mentions much of the city, and Galilee, all the land of Naphtali. He carried them captive to Assyria. Then Hoshea, the son of Elah, led a conspiracy against Pekah, the son of Remaliah, and struck and killed him. So in other words, the last assassination that takes place, Pekah is assassinated and Hoshea becomes the last king of Israel. Then we go back to Judah. Jotham, son of Uzziah, second year of Pekah, reigned 16 years, starting at age 25. His mother's name was Jerusha, daughter of Zadok, which means, by the way, righteous. And then we have Ahaz, son of Jotham, in chapter 16, in the 17th year of Pekah. He's 20 years old when he becomes king, and he reigns 16 years. So he's an evil king, and when we look at the book of Isaiah, which we'll see how the prophets fit in, on this sheet right here, you'll notice if a prophet is related to Israel, you notice how the prophet's name is there, where it'll show you the span of kings where basically their ministries overlap. So you notice like Elijah during the reign of Omri, Ahab, Ahaziah, Jehoram, and then Elisha during Jehu, Jehoahaz, Jehoash, Jeroboam II. I mean, you can see the overlapping. You see Jonah and Amos during the reign of Jeroboam II. Hosea, one of the minor prophets, goes all the way from Jeroboam all the way to Hosea to the end. In other words, they're prophets to the northern kingdom. Prophets in the southern kingdom here, you got like Isaiah going from, he was actually started he became a prophet during the reign of Uzziah. In Isaiah chapter 6, verse 1, Uzziah had been king for so long, 52 years, that when he died, they thought the country was going to fall apart. Uzziah had always been king, it seemed like. And of course, that's when you have the vision of God on the throne in heaven. God is saying, God is still on the throne. He is still reigning. Doesn't matter who's reigning on earth. But anyway, Uzziah's son is the wicked king Ahaz. Ahaz, of course, is the king who Isaiah the prophet is told by God, go to Ahaz and ask and tell him to ask for a sign. Remember, Ahaz says, I will not tempt the Lord. And then it is contempt because God told him to ask for a sign. So remember, God says through Isaiah the fact that you are testing the Lord. And remember, he said, the sign will be given to you, whether you like it or not. Behold, a virgin will conceive and bear a son. Remember, that's where Isaiah 7:14 comes in. It's basically a sign given to Ahaz. Okay, so I hope you're all familiar with that. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and be with child. You all heard that prophecy?
Where is it again?
Isaiah 7:14. It's a prophecy of that the Messiah would be virgin born. Remember, Mary said, "How shall I have a child, seeing as I know not a man?" You know, I've never known a man. How can I possibly get pregnant? Remember, then we get the famous verse about how the Holy Spirit will overshadow her, and that which will be born of her will be called the Son of God. Okay, so it shows you the prophets when they were kings, I mean, who they were ministering to. So it gives you an idea where the historical context is. And this handout is going to become extremely handy later on. Okay, we only got like 10 minutes to go. I want to get through this very last part here. We're going to have one more good king. First of all, we're going to have, I'm not going to rush through this too much. I'll finish it when I finish it. Any questions so far? Have you been razzle-dazzled with just too much information? Mm-hmm. Okay. And I'm not even spending time talking about criticisms of the book. I won't even mention things like the mysterious numbers of the Hebrew kings. And one of you noticed, when I add these things up, it doesn't add up to the right numbers and stuff. So does that mean the text is wrong? The text isn't wrong. A lot of Bible critics will say, well, obviously, they couldn't get their numbers right. And remember, we talked about co-regencies. Okay. So if you added up all the numbers for the kings of Judah, you'd end up with like 390 years. But you can't have 390 years. That's too many years. So you can actually figure out how many overlaps there are in the kings of Judah and the kings of Israel remember, Hezekiah's father was, who is this father? Who's his father? Hezekiah. Ahaz, a bad king, right? So you'll notice on your sheet here, it's going to talk about find Hezekiah. He's going to be down here by Isaiah and stuff like that, okay? Notice underneath it says Manasseh's vice-regency under Hezekiah. In other words, while Hezekiah was king, he's training his son Manasseh. Remember, Manasseh's going to be a king for like 52 or 55 years, and he's going to be the most wicked king that Israel ever had. So wicked, in fact, that God says, I have to destroy the southern kingdom too. It's so polluted and so bad, can't recover. Okay. So anyway, is there anybody here that doesn't understand how you keep time with 1st and 2nd Kings? That was the main thing I was trying to teach. Yes?
If it says someone's a king for 1 year, that means they could have been a king for a month, or 11 months.
Um,
And if they're king for 2 years, they're at least 13 months. And
well, let's just say it's if they were a king for 2 years, it's close to 2 years.
okay.
It's you can round off to 2 years, and if it was like 13 months, you'd round off to 1 year.
Oh, you would. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's not telling you how many months and days, unless they like one king only reigned 7 days, one king reigned 3 months.
Gotcha.
Okay. What I'd like you to do in 2 Kings, if you would read from Ahaz, basically read from 2 Kings all the way to the end to the Babylon captivity, that will take you through the Assyrian captivity. And then, of course, you have Assyria. And you'll get the names of the Assyrian kings. Because I'm going to actually have time to just mention them, who they are and stuff like that, so they're more than just names. Because when we, by the way, 721 BC, we'll look at who was king there. And then there's only the southern kingdom. We want to look at this period right here all the way to 586 BC and Babylon, the Babylonian captivity. Babylonian captivity. So we can look at this line of kings right here, and then why did God have to destroy the southern kingdom? If they had so many godly kings, why did he end up having to terminate this kingdom too? I mean, we want to look at the reasons why. And I want to have you look at the reasons why this kingdom was terminated. And you'll discover that if you're reading from 2 Kings 16 to the end of the chapter. It's only like 8 or 9 chapters. It's going to give you a whole list of sins that they were committing up here, and it's going to give you a whole list of sins that they were committing down here as to why God had to terminate them. But you'll also find out that the 2 best kings that Israel ever had, outside of David, was Hezekiah and remember Joash, down here. It's going to talk about them, but then the worst possible king of all, Manasseh. Hezekiah, the best king, gave rise to the worst king. Remember Hezekiah's, he had just survived the invasion by Sennacherib, the Assyrian. God miraculously killed 185,000 of the Assyrian army. Sennacherib wakes up and discovers he's the only one left alive in camp. He looks around, there's 185,000 dead Assyrian soldiers around him. He goes home, gets assassinated.
Those sons.
So, and then right after that, remember Isaiah the prophet comes up to Hezekiah, King Hezekiah, and says, "Get your affairs in order, you're going to die." King Hezekiah weeps before the Lord greatly. "Oh God, I've been a good king, please let me live." And remember, God says, "Okay, I'll give you 15 more years." And he says, "Well, give me a sign." Remember, God says, "Okay, I'll have the sundial go backwards." Remember that? So you'll read about that. Good thing class is about over. My voice is about gone. And then you'll read about the second good king, and then, okay. I may not pray. I might have one of you guys pray. Did I miss a break?
No.
Okay. So anyway, please read those chapters so that you get the flow of this. We'll spend some time talking about this. I plan to be all the way through the captivity and Ezra and Nehemiah. We're not covering the books of Ezra and Nehemiah. We're looking at the significance of them. And then this sheet will become extremely handy in the remainder of our course. There'll probably be a lot of questions on the midterm, and maybe your paper will be based a lot on this so that you can put your paper together so that you can see how all the prophets fit in that historical framework which we've laid out. So that's what's going to be important there. So I wanted to take my time with the rest of the history. Obviously, we're not going to cover the book of Isaiah and Jeremiah and Ezekiel. They're all about 50 chapters. So obviously we can't cover those, and there's 100 some chapters in the Minor Prophets. But we're going to see basically what those books are about and who they're talking to. And basically this tells you when they ministered, if you know who they're ministering to, you know what their ministry is about and what their subject matter is. So that's the importance of knowing the historical books. So let's go ahead, and we've got like 2 minutes. There's no questions then, right? Does everybody know what to do for next week? Okay. I'll have your other papers back next week. Within a few weeks, I'm going to give you your next paper. Once we finish the historical section, I'll give you your next paper and be getting you ready for your final, okay? So, Isaac, could you close us in prayer?
Well, Father, thank you for how privilege it is that you've given us another day to learn about your word. Lord, I pray that we don't take this for advantage, but rather take it as a good thing and learn from it, glean from the mistakes that your people have made, and may we not make the same. Just pray that you bless us, be with us today and throughout this week. Amen.
Boy, you betcha these guys are giving us examples of what not to do, right? It says that twice in the New Testament. These guys are examples of what not to do.